the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And we have a little bit of a catch-up episode today, so we haven't seen each other in a while. You guys will have seen the Brian Scary episode, hopefully, by now. If you haven't, we might put a link down below for that. But Alex got back from the Red Sea, so we're going to talk a lot about that trip. And I was in Iceland, so we'll talk a little bit about that trip as well.
Well, you're not going to get off with a little bit about that. We don't normally have too much of our personal lives on here. It's not quite as exciting as talking about underwater photography gear. But I do know, Matt, that it wasn't just any old trip to Iceland. It was rather an important one in your life. So I hear that you are no longer a single man. You are engaged to Ariana.
Yes.
Tell us. I want to hear all about it, to be honest.
So the reason we're talking about this is because there's a little bit of an underwater related thing to it. We went to Iceland. It's our second time there. And the very first night we went, or the very first day we got there, our plan was to walk out to this puffin colony that's way on the south end of an island off Iceland. So we slogged all the way there in the rain, found a couple puffins, which was cool, and I took a couple mediocre pictures, and it actually wasn't the puffin spot we were aiming for. That was still further on. So when we were finished with the puffins, I asked Ariana, I was like, hey, do you still want to go all the way up to the top of the hill? And she's like, well, we're already here. Let's walk all the way up. So we get up there, and as we're walking out to the overlook, I'm not paying attention. I'm looking at something. And she goes, I think I just saw a fin out there. And I'm like, it's probably a humpback. Humpbacks are pretty common in Iceland. And she's like, I don't think it was a humpback. It looked different. And then as we're walking down the hill, all of a sudden we start seeing fins kind of all over the place. And it's a whole pod of orcas that had corralled the bait ball into this little cove. And we're right on the cliffs above it. So we're maybe 150 feet up, and we can watch the orcas underwater hunting this bait ball. There's puffins flying all over the place. Gannets are hitting it from above, and they're her favorite animal. I have never seen her. We've known each other 12 years. I've never seen her this excited about anything ever. She's losing her mind over these orcas. She's completely forgotten about me. I'm just background noise at that point. But it was cool to just watch her get super excited. And the orcas are breaching. You can see them rolling underwater as they push the bait up towards the surface. It was really, really cool. And I had planned to ask her. I planned to propose later in the trip. And as we're sitting there and she's losing her mind, I was like, I don't know I don't think I'm going to get a better moment than this. So I took the box out, and I'm sitting on the ground behind her, just waiting for her to actually turn around and acknowledge me. And it's probably been half an hour at this point, and she has not turned around to look at me, not once. Finally, she sits down and then still doesn't turn around to look at me. So I sit there for another couple minutes waiting for her to acknowledge me. Still hasn't. So eventually I just asked, I'm like, hey, I was planning on asking this later on in the trip, but I don't think I'm going to get a better moment. And she finally turned around and looked at me, and I had the ring out and asked her to marry me, and it was really, really cool. And then the orcas were still hunting, so we got to watch them for another, 40 minutes. So it was between seeing the orcas, the puffins, the moment, it was the perfect time to do it. It went really well, and I never thought that orcas would be a part of my proposal, but Mother Nature threw me a bone with that one, and it was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, many congrats. I'm assuming she says yes.
She did say yes.
Many congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And did you do anything to celebrate it, or was it too much to top that?
Well, initially we walked all the way back in the rain, but it kind of set the tone for the rest of the trip. It was a really good trip, and we did do some diving up north. I know you've been up to the northern part of Iceland and dived up by Stryton, or as the Brits call it, Stritton, or at least that's what Byron told me. Maybe he was just messing with me, but we went up there, and I love weird fish, as everybody watching this probably knows. So I wanted to see wolffish. We did a dive right off Stryton's little, we wouldn't call it a house reef, but off their dock on the first day. Conditions were awful, so I wasn't super optimistic about the wolffish dive.
Yeah, kind of bloomy time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. They've had a ton of rain recently. We only had one day of sun the whole time we were there, despite it being summer. But
it is.
So we did the wolffish the next day, and they're amazing. If anyone's seen wolf eels, they kind of behave the same way. Especially if they're used to divers, they don't care that you're there. They'll come over and inspect you. I have bite marks on one of my flashlights from one of the wolf eels that came over and kept attacking it. And I don't know if he thought it was tasty or if he just took exception to it. But there's silver dent like scratches in my light now from him scraping the paint off with his teeth. We saw lumpfish on that dive too, which is really cool. Didn't have eggs yet, so he's a bit skittish.
It was a male though, a colourful one.
Yes. So he was on this one rock, clearly waiting for a female, but he just kept swimming like these lazy circles around the rock, and it'll only let you get so far. So I have some pictures of them.
Yeah, we call them lump suckers. But there's this poster that goes around Scandinavia that has like all the Scandinavian names and then the English name. And yeah, they've got all these weird English names. So they always call them, well, in Scandinavia, they call them, they call the wolffish, they call them catfish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's that's what the Scandinavians will call them. Oh. But obviously in their language, the translation. And they call the lumpfish, lump suckers lumpfish.
Yeah, so it was definitely a bit confusing because I kept calling them lumpies.
Yeah.
But true lumpies are like the spiny lump suckers, the little guys, and then they're actually lumpfish, and then some people call them lump suckers. So we kept missing. I'm sure you met Ellie who owns Strighton, and he and I kept missing each other with talking about certain critters because I kept using Americanized abbreviations for them, and he just stared at me like, "What?" But he knew I liked weird fish, so he showed me the lump sucker, lumpfish, and then obviously the wolffish are around, and they're a fantastic subject because they'll kind of just come right over to you, and with those big bulbous heads and the teeth all pointed out in weird angles. And most people probably don't find them all that appealing. I think they're fantastic. And we saw quite a few individuals, and I had one male who was kind of sitting at the entrance of his den, fully propped up on his fins and teeth all just like that. So I got some nice pictures of him. And
how did you get on with the cold? Because it is not warm up there.
No, so it was the bottom temperature was 41 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. Probably like
it's not much above freezing.
Yeah, it's like maybe 4 or 5.
Nice, yeah.
I honestly, it wasn't actually that cold. Because your face goes numb pretty quickly, so you don't pay attention to that. The only thing that got cold was my right hand, because that's the one holding the camera, so it wasn't moving much. Other than that, I was fine. Plus, when you have things to photograph, you don't acknowledge the cold too much.
Do you put your hand in the hot water? So,
unfortunately, Little Strighton, which is where all the wolffish are, it's not venting anymore.
Oh, okay.
There's
probably another one nearby they haven't discovered yet where it's coming out.
Yes. So there is the big one that still vents like crazy. We didn't dive there. The little one, apparently, it got tapped out. So I didn't know that was possible, but the Icelandic government tapped in to get hot water however long ago and dramatically underestimated how long the hot water would last. So now the vent is gone, and Ellie was saying that as far as I was concerned, there was a ton of life. There were cod everywhere, there were fish everywhere, tons of invertebrates.
Yeah, it's a great place for cod, actually. Yeah.
So quick tangent, the cod are so friendly, like they'll literally come up and you can pet them. I was just sitting there petting them, and they don't seem to care.
Well, it was so long ago that I went there, and long before really Iceland developed for tourism, that we didn't know the wolffish were shy, the cod were shy, and I would really love to go back there, and I will definitely, when I have the chance to do a solo trip, Iceland is a really good choice because I can get a lot done in a short time and not be far away from home, and I'm really keen to go back there.
Well, let me know when you go, because I would like to go dive. I would like to do a decent actual dive trip up there, because the country is spectacular, but obviously diving's the best. So I want to go back and do some more diving there. But yeah, there was lots of cod. But Ellie was saying is like you should have been here, even 5 years ago before it ran out, because that dive site was apparently just covered with, biomass like crazy. And like I said, as far as I was concerned, it still was. But obviously, I've never been there before, so it was probably dramatically different as he's spent more time there. But
I guess it was 12, 13 years ago I went there.
Yeah.
It probably peaked a bit better when more people were going there more regularly. I enjoyed it, but it was cool anyway. Yeah. So have you made any wedding plans? You probably don't necessarily want to say anything about it on here, but
nothing yet. We've tossed around some ideas, but nothing concrete. But once we're back home in Florida, because if it looks weird, I'm in Massachusetts. I'm not in my normal spot. I'm actually sitting in a rocking chair, and my laptop is sitting on Naya's crate. But once we're back home, we're not traveling so much, and with spending so much time with family, we'll get down to doing that and back in a regular routine. But now that we've talked about Iceland, let's hear a little bit about the Red Sea, slightly warmer waters.
Yeah, slightly warmer waters. A very enjoyable trip. I've got 4 workshops this year in the Red Sea. I'm going there twice with 2 back-to-back workshop trips. And these were actually my 29th, the ones I've just done, were my 29th and 30th workshop liveaboard weeks. So I've done it a lot, and you would think that that would mean that the excitement had worn off a bit. And I have to say, with 4 trips this year, I was a bit, I'm not sure I really fancy going that much this year. And I absolutely loved it on this trip. It was, I'll play a little video in the background rather so you don't have to keep looking at us two. So you can see sort of, just a little bit of the diving. And just little clips. I don't take my GoPro, it's a DJI one. I don't take my DJI GoPro in more than once a day. I try and take it in only once every other day, just because I find, although I don't use it very much on a dive, I just find it a bit of a distraction. I don't need that much video. But it's nice to have a few little memories on video from the trip. And so you get a little bit of a flavor from that video. But one of the things I say about this trip is I actually did more diving on this trip than any of the previous Red Sea trips I've done. We just, the boat that we go on, it's called Gazala Explorer. They run it brilliantly, and they just got us so much time in the water. And I actually did 52 dives during the trip, which is pretty hardcore. Anyone who's done a Red Sea trip, if you get over 20, you're doing well. And for a week, and doing 2 weeks, I managed to average 26 dives on each week. So that was pretty cool. We did
50 more dives than I did in Iceland.
Yeah, so it was that was really, and I loved it. And that's the Red Sea. It's, although I've been there a lot, although it's going to the same dive sites. I've dived pretty much on all those previous trips, and those are the trips that I've been teaching on. I mean, I obviously did, probably another 15 or so trips before I started doing teaching trips there. So it's a place that I've shot and dived a lot. And yeah, I still really loved it. It was just so productive. Every single dive delivered photographically. Obviously, I was in charge of where we went diving, so that helped make sure we were hitting good places at good times. And yeah, just fantastically enjoyable trip. We have that episode, which will probably go out before this one, on the backscatter HF, the hybrid flash 1. Strobe, which I tested a lot on the trip because not many people outside the backscatter circle have tried it yet. So I know lots of people are keen to try that. And I also got to try the Kraken Strobe for the first time, the KS-160. And actually, I was going to show you a few pictures that I took with that now. So these are some of my favorite photos from the day I spent shooting the Kraken strobes in the Red Sea. I'd never used the strobes before this day. I did use them a little bit again later in the trip, but it was just this quite nice, just walking through a day using the strobes. The pictures are all unprocessed, just straight from the camera, which I think when you're talking about strobes and lighting, is always good to see unprocessed pictures. This is one of the first pictures I took, and I felt that the white balance, as I was reviewing it in camera, was a bit cold, just a reflection of the strobes being cooler than the ones I normally use. So after this shot, seeing that slightly blue look, they're not like cold strobes at all. They're just a little bit more closer to 5,000 than sort of the mid 4s that I mid 4,000s that I usually prefer. So after this shot, I warmed the white balance up in the camera. I tend to always shoot with a fixed Kelvin white balance, particularly when I'm testing strobes, so that I'm seeing much more exactly what the strobes are doing and not what the camera is processing to correct anything away there. I was happier now with the colours coming out of them, and then move around to try and find some nicer things to shoot. I really like the softness and evenness of light across a frame like this, that you get a nice natural fall off of light from the foreground to the background. A lot of overly strong dome diffusers tend to give a very fast fall off of light with distance, and there's a very soft evenness of light with these pictures. So I prefer the light to be a little bit warmer, but apart from that, I think the softness and evenness of light is very good. I didn't feel that the strength of the strobes was that strong. I know they're rated at 160 watt seconds, but I've used strobes that have less watt seconds that clearly have more power. So I think watt seconds are a lot more valuable to understand a strobe than guide number. how efficiently you use that power, and the fact that no one can actually independently test watt seconds, I think can be a bit misleading at times. So I'd take it as a better guide than a guide number, but not a perfect guide by any means. These are all at Ras Mohammed, just shooting reef scenes, big, wide fisheye, wall-to-wall subject matter, which is for me like one of the biggest challenges you can do with a strobe. Bright, sunny, tropical conditions, subject matter right across the whole frame with a fisheye, and you're trying to light that evenly across the frame. And I think that the Kraken strobes do really well for that. You can see in these pictures. These are just other pictures. These were on the second dive of the day. We went to these caves to photograph beams of light, and I wasn't using strobes for these shots, but these are just a couple of my favourites from those dives. This was in one of the caves where I did turn the strobes on. I wasn't the first photographer in there, so it's a bit scattery in there with these sweepers coming across the picture, and it's not been processed at all. So there's a bit of a highlight area on that top left, but that's just the way it's shooting. But back into a more normal reef environment, you can see very, very good, soft, even illumination, a very naturalistic look to the shot, which I think is really strong, really good. And then, taking on, again, big fisheye, wide-angle reef scene, shot f/13 at ISO 320 into the sun in the sunny Red Sea. So this requires a lot of strobe power, and you can see that the strobes are really delivering to light up a scene like that. Big schools of fish, again, against the light, requires lots of strobe power. But again, the strobes are doing a really good job. There's something strange going on this guy here. It's one of my bubbles. Apology for the bubble in the picture. These are unprocessed pictures again. The school of snappers again, this time from the other side, getting big wide coverage over a big school. Sort of maxing the strobes out to do this. But shooting at f11 now, just open the aperture a little bit to try and help the strobes to carry. Back to reef scenes, you can see really nice even illumination on these group of Antheus in the school, playing around, just rear curtain sync shot of some glassfish in a cave. These are all at Ras Mohammed on the same dive as the previous few. And then the final dive of the day was just a shallow water sunset dive, or running up to sunset to play with afternoon light with shallow water corals. This is at Ras Sid. And you can just see the strobe gives nice light, and it's got the power to control things with those nice dappled light sun rays in the pictures. These pictures need a bit of vibrance really to bring the colours out. They look a bit pasty, but that's just lack of processing. These are unprocessed raw files in Lightroom. You've all got unprocessed raw files, so you'll be used to seeing them. But yeah, I'm very happy with the cleanness of night. For me, I'd like a warmer diffuser on it, but that would be easier to do, and it could probably do with a click more power if I was being really picky. But as bang for buck, I think it's an absolutely great strobe.
Yeah, so those pictures are spectacular. I've not actually shot them much outside of muck environments, other than a couple outings for sharks. So it's nice to see that they can handle big reef scenes as well. And those, I think you mentioned it, those are completely unprocessed so far. So
yeah, I think if you're going to talk about strobes, it's important to see the unprocessed files, because you can hide so much in the processing. And in fact, with the backscatter ones as well, the first thing I did when I got back is I just selected a batch and sent them to Berkeley at backscatter and just said, this is how it's performing, and these are my comments. Because he knows what a raw file looks like. He doesn't, he knows that, I could tweak that or fix that, but yeah, it's the way to look at the strobes, and that's why I thought. So yeah, for those watching, don't judge me on those as final shots. I'm happy to show the raw files, because the Red Sea is a great place to take pictures, and it's, I can take nice pictures. But I think it also shows the quality of light that, that Kraken with its big circular flash tube gives. So yeah, very impressive. So that was kind of the Red Sea for me. It was 2 very enjoyable workshop weeks, and as you saw in the video earlier, I did celebrate my 50th dive with a cake being made on my head. So that was quite fun as well. Not as important for my life as your adventures in Iceland, but still, it was really great to do so much underwater photography. And I have to say, with so much gear change at the moment in underwater photography, having going to a destination where you've been before and you've been a lot is the place to get on top of things. A lot of last year I didn't, going to places like Galapagos and Papua New Guinea, I didn't feel like I'd had, which were kind of, more, exceptional trips for me. I didn't feel I'd had enough time with the Sony camera to really work through every little thing about how I want to use it, trying different focus modes, on the same dive with different subjects, playing around with how I want to use the white balance and that sort of thing. I've done some of that, but you kind of almost need a little bit of diving you've done before in your life as a photographer, because I think it allows you to get through, to work through those things. And when you're trying new gear, going to places that inside out is really important, because it allows you, particularly when you have the chance to back gear, really understand the differences. And I think our community is often the worst at reviewing stuff. People are either working for a particular company and therefore don't want to say anything negative, or want to toe the party line on things. And then I think people who've bought gear tend to react, also quite extreme. Some people, if they've spent money on something, they expect it to be perfect, and they're like, why hasn't this improved my photos? I've just spent $1,000 on my strobes. I should be winning underwater photographer of the year now. And it's kind of doesn't quite work like that. And then the other way around is people are like, well, I did my research, I spent my money, I chose this, and I'm going to defend this product as much as I can. There's kind of almost this placebo effect of like, they've spent all this money and they're like, oh yeah, my pictures are so much better now. And it's like, they look the same to me. But, so that's why I think it's good to test gear, even if it's not the gear you end up owning. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the, I do gear reviews obviously for Dive Photo Guide a lot. And I know a lot of them end up looking pretty similar because I dive them at Blue Heron Bridge. But like you said, if it's somewhere familiar and then you can compare, different products at the same spot on the same subjects, and not have to worry about being somewhere new, I think that's really valuable. Even though it might not be as much fun as taking something to some far-flung location that you haven't been, testing in your own backyard, I think, is far more valuable.
Yeah, and the Red Sea, we're very, very lucky in Europe to have it so close. It just delivers, particularly when you go, on a photo trip there, which is planned at exactly the peak time of year, and you go somewhere where, we're always just going to the right sites. We don't dive in many of the sites that other people rave about. We go to the sites that deliver photographically, and it just makes such a good trip. So yeah, I love going to the Red Sea. It was a fab trip, and but congratulations again. I'm more excited by what's been going on in your life. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for watching. I know this was a bit of a different episode today. Hopefully you enjoyed it anyway. And we will see you guys in the next one.